What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Geek Weekly podcast. I am your host, Leslie, and today's very special guest is Tom Griscom. He is a photographer, and he is very great at what he does.
Thank
So,
you.
how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Very excited to have you here today.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right, let's just go ahead and get started. And so, you travel a lot for your job, I've noticed. So, what was your favorite city to work in?
Oh boy. Um, oh man. I mean, I actually really love working in Atlanta, to tell the truth. From a logistics standpoint, it's easy to get around. It has a lot of different looks. Prior to coming here, I lived in New York for a long time, and I like photographing there a lot. Like working there is a little bit of a challenge, but I mean, Atlanta's just there's. I've been here for 8 years, and I feel like I still haven't seen all of it because it's so big,
Mhm.
and I feel like once you kind of made your way around, like documenting it or doing projects in it, by the time you get back to where you started, it's like different again. So I find, since it's so large, it kind of presents a never ending, like kind of source of things to document. So yeah, Atlanta. I'm saying that because hometown. um that's a really tough question. I mean, because every place I've been, like, there's always something interesting about it, to
Yeah.
photograph. So it's hard to. I mean, I really love working in LA a lot. LA is amazing to me because it is a lot like here. It's massive, and and you can be on like certain parts of town, and it's completely different than the next. So, but yeah,
I
Atlanta.
Atlanta.
I'm gonna stick with Atlanta. Yeah.
I've lived here. I live outside of Atlanta, and
Okay.
I mean I've been going to Atlanta my whole life, and it's every time you go up there, there's something different. Always. Something's
Yeah, I
always
didn't grow
changing.
up. Yeah, I didn't grow up here, but my mom is from here. So I used to come down here a lot when I was younger. And I can tell you that Atlanta, like, it's been interesting watching how it's changed. I mean, Atlanta in the late 70s and early 80s looks, I mean, it's just, there's very little that's here that I remember from that era. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe. But and then I went to college in Savannah, and we used to come up here all the time in the like mid 90s. And again, like the only thing that still looks the exact same as it did when I was in all those years is a little 5 points. little
Oh
five
yeah.
points. Little 5 points hasn't changed very much. So
Yeah.
still looks very much like I remember it from 1995. So
That is so I love that it stayed the same.
yeah. I mean, who knows for how long? Because
Yeah.
I mean, God, this city is like changed so much in the 8 years I've been here. It's a very different place than like when I got here. So
Hmm. Yeah, it is. Atlanta is definitely a place that is always, every time I go up there, there's at least something different. There's at least one thing that's a little different.
yeah.
So, what was it like working in LA and New York? Different to Atlanta.
Well, I mean, they, I think it might be, for me, it might be like it might have more to do with the eras that I was there in terms of like my industry. When I was working in New York, and we're going back like 20 years, it was still film photography. And the industry just felt very different. It was a lot, I don't know, busier is the right word, but there was
Hmm.
photography than there is today, because you had like the processing. We worked with larger cameras. Like there's a ubiquitousness now to cameras. They all kind of look the same, but you know, I would work for photographers who worked in a variety of sizes of film. So we would have like different places we went to process certain films to get them back in time. And you know, the industry just felt like it was much more involved. Now things feel like very streamlined. So I have my I'm I feel like that it felt a lot larger, um, because there was all these kind of tertiary industries around photography that handled certain things, you know, like film processing. The rental houses were different, and so like it just felt different, now because of digital. It feels like it moves a lot faster, so I don't really notice like when I go someplace else to work these days. It doesn't feel any different than when I work in Atlanta, because because photography has become so much more self-contained. Like, you know, we don't really need to do much outside of like what I already like possess to be able to get the jobs done for a client if it's a commercial job. Because you know, we can shoot it, I can edit it right there on my laptop. We've got that lighting that travels with me, that's so much more compact, but also more robust. So I tend to, yeah, I guess I look through it through that prism, is through how different the industry is. Because if I go somewhere else to work, I'm so kind of dialed in on how I like to work that it's just, oh, I'm just someplace else. Does that make sense?
That
You
makes
know,
total sense.
I mean, I it, I could say like if like 20 years ago, if I was to come down to Atlanta to work, the thing that we would have to do so much prep to figure out like, okay, we're there, we got to get like the film processed and sent to the client, and we got to get lighting while we're there. So we're doing so much different kind of research to figure out how to just get the work done. Where most of that stuff I don't have to deal with anymore. So, you know, maybe we'd have to rent some gear if we go somewhere. But then on the aesthetic side, we're just, you know, working in those three cities are all like really, really different. I mean, like, you know, here in Atlanta, it's like so spread out. Los Angeles is really spread out. Like getting to what you need to do is takes a little more time. New York, it's like it's much more condensed. So yeah, they present different challenges in that regard. And then creatively, they just look different. The light falls different in places. I mean, I love all three places because they all have like really, you know, their own kind of quality of light that you don't get anywhere else. And a lot of it is just geographic purposes, but then also man-made elements. I mean, in New York, at this time of the year, the days feel so much shorter. The sun is blocked by buildings. I mean, I would remember coming out of like, you know, work at like 4:30 in the afternoon in the wintertime, and it's already feels like it's like you never even saw the sun during the day.
Yeah.
Atlanta, you know, we're big and we just get a different quality of light here. LA, I mean, God, you know, the sun has an incredibly different quality of light than you see on either cities, just different coasts. So they all kind of have present a different aesthetic quality that's really nice and very unique to them. So
That's incredibly interesting. I've always wanted to go to LA and New York. Um, but I do have to say that Atlanta is incredibly spread out, and I can see how like the lighting differences, especially because California, for instance, it's super sunny and hot there, And New
Yes.
York, they get snow, and Atlanta doesn't.
Yeah,
It
but
can be just weather.
I mean, Atlanta and New York would be much closer than California in terms of
Mhm.
like what it's like. Because everybody thinks that it's really hot here. Man, it gets really hot in New York.
Yeah,
East Coast is just it gets hot in the same way that we experience it here because it's just humid. There's no
it is.
you don't have the humidity out on the West Coast. They get snow in New York, we don't, and they get wind. That's the one thing that's like that's helpful because you're on an island,
Mhm.
and so you get a breeze. The reason that it always feels so much hotter here is because we're not on any body of water, so it doesn't
Yeah.
the air doesn't really move. It's so static. And being on location working in the summers in Georgia, and especially during the COVID times where you're wearing a mask, it's been kind of brutal. I'll say that.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
the
yeah,
whole
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, you're good, you're good.
No, what were we gonna say?
Okay. I was just saying, the the Georgia humidity combined with wearing a mask, like, during the summer in July,
Yeah.
torture.
Yeah, I worked on this thing like it's going to be 2 years ago. And we were shooting out in Covington, and it was supposed to be like a period piece. So it was supposed to be 1920s West Virginia, Appalachia in the winter.
Hmm.
And everybody's wearing appropriate clothing for Appalachia in the winter. And so, I mean, people were fainting and throwing up due to heat exhaustion because they're wearing heavy wool clothing, but when we weren't shooting, they were having to wear masks, and we were outside too, because this was kind of like, well, this was very early on. Um, I think the first round of vaccines had happened by that
Mhm.
point. Yeah, so it would have been summer 2021. No, that would have been, we didn't get that in, no, the vaccines didn't roll out till that fall. So nobody was vaccinated yet.
Yeah.
And they hadn't like kind of loosened things where if you were working outside, you could go mask free. So that's why we're in that situation. These days when we're on location, like working, people don't have to wear masks anymore. And I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, especially with how I cannot even imagine being in that thick of, like, clothing in the Georgia humidity, and,
Yeah.
like, that's awful.
Well, so yeah, because we were out on a farm in Covington that had like really no shade, no coverage. Oh, it was rough. I mean, and I can handle it. And even I was like, man, this is hot.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I mean, I basically, if you dress, because I had the luck of being able to dress how I wanted. So
yeah.
some people didn't. So
I can't even imagine.
yeah, it was bad.
So, what has been your favorite project that you've worked on?
Oh boy, that's tough.
Alright,
That
top 3.
okay. So I mean, I'm gonna go with the most recent stuff.
Okay.
The thing I work on with Carrie, I absolutely love. It's this show, and it's a show called Lego Masters, and it's on Fox.
I love Lego Masters.
Yeah, so funny thing is like I'd never done anything like that before. I did the first season. We're getting ready to start the fourth season here in a couple of weeks. I never worked on anything like that. So,
Yeah.
my introduction, all my film and TV experience had been scripted stuff. So reality competition shows, I'd never done anything before. And, I was the first year I did it
Mhm.
was 2021, and we were kind of knee deep in the funkiness of COVID and the kind of understanding of how we go back to work and do it safely. So I was working on another thing in Wilmington,
Mhm.
and I got the opportunity, and I didn't really know what to think of it at first. I mean, my freelancer brain was like, "You're going to do it because that's work."
Yeah.
Um, but then my other side of my brain, the creative side, was like, "Oh well, like Will Arnett's on this. This will be fun," because I worked with funny people before and I really enjoyed it. And man, after a couple of days, like, oh, this is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And now going on my third season working on the show, I would continue to do it. The crew's awesome. I love everybody we work with. It's not only is everybody great, but everybody's really good at what they do.
Mhm.
And that just makes the job like fun and easy. I mean, it's still work, we're still having to work. So when I say easy, it's not like, oh man, this is like the easiest thing.
Yeah.
It's a well-oiled machine. And so yeah, I love working on that. Last year I got to do a campaign rally with Raphael Warnock a few days
Yes.
before the runoff.
Mhm.
And it was interesting because it was the second time that I'd gotten to work with him. And he's great. Like just a great guy. I was glad to have gotten to do that. It's also good because I used to do a lot of work like that.
Mhm.
Um, in the past several years, I've done a lot. I've been working more in entertainment, but for a long time, I did work like that, and it was nice to kind of step back into that world, even for just a day. So I really enjoyed that. And let's see. Trying to think, like in the last year. And this is good. Well, that's not even out yet, so I can't talk about that. Like, oh yeah, that one was really great, but I can't talk about that. Uh, hmm. Man, there's another show because I'm thinking recent.
Mhm.
There's another show that I worked on for Fox that I've done 2 seasons of, and it was called The Resident.
Oh yeah.
And it's not something I would typically watch.
Mhm.
I tend to be more sci-fi stuff like that. So a hospital drama is not really my thing. But it goes back, the cast and the crew are some of the best people I've ever worked with. It's very professional. And I did 2 seasons of it. And again, like just such a wonderful experience. And I made some work on it that I just absolutely love. And Yeah, that was a great one. But the thing that I always go back to is all the stuff that I worked on when I first started doing film and TV stuff, which was Adult Swim stuff.
Yeah.
So a lot of live action Adult Swim stuff, because that was like how I got into this, and it was just chaos and anarchy and hilarious. And yeah, I mean, it was a great kind of intro to the world of television, and I will never forget it. I mean, it's unfortunate a lot of the stuff I used to work on is no longer on the air, but
Mhm.
those were some of the most, because like funny people I can shoot, like photograph all day.
Yeah.
They make your job really easy, because they're performers. And it's so much easier than working with people who aren't used to being in front of the camera. So I mean, there's a lot of jobs that have been really, really memorable, but I'm trying to think of the things that are recent,
Mhm.
for you. So
No, those are such good answers. Those are so cool. I was actually gonna ask you about the photographing Warnock and Ossoff, because that is something that I think is just like such a great opportunity to get to do.
yeah, I mean, that stuff, the editorial work is a lot of fun.
Mhm.
And I've really enjoyed it. I mean, I also photographed Trump too.
Mhm.
like that'll be 8 years ago this
Oh
summer.
wow.
So, I've definitely done a lot of editorial documentary, like news reportage coverage, stuff like that. So I've kind of seen, and it's fun. Um, if you're an adrenaline junkie, it's great. Getting older, like I don't really want to have to run all over the place like I and so it's you know working on the TV shows and all that. It's a little more chill
Yeah.
compared to being on campaign trails and doing coverage. But it was a lot of fun getting a chance to work with those guys, with Warnock. And 2 years ago I did worked with both Ossoff and Warnock.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean it's no different than like photographing a Will Arnett. You have to know how to get the shot quickly, uh, but also make something that's going to look interesting.
Yeah.
Tell a story. And I wish I could kind of uh, have some kind of magic like theory of how it happens. And a lot of it's like you find yourself in a situation that you've been before.
Mhm.
So you kind of know, like, all right, I'm gonna, like, this is how I want to frame it. But also too, when you show up, you're very quickly scanning the where you're shooting, to figure out, like, all right, where's my best spot, where's the light good. You may not be able to get to move them or do anything. You may just have to photograph them where they're going to be, opposed to like where you'd like to do it.
Yeah.
So you just I wish there was like a formula. I don't really know how sometimes it works. Here's the thing, like, a lot of the times I don't like what I got,
Yeah.
but the people that wanted me to do it love it. And I think it's a lot of it is, kind of boils down to, in those situations, it's more about a documentation of a moment. And that's
Mhm.
what's all they were really looking for. And then sometimes you're lucky enough to get the shot that you wanted. And, in that case with that Warnock shot, that last one, yeah, I mean, that one goes in my portfolio because I got the shot I wanted. But
Yeah.
it's not always like that.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that like everything I do is great or anything like that. But
Mhm.
I think, for the general purposes of who I was shooting it for, they were going to be happy regardless. They just needed a shot of him, crowd, and whatnot. But because I actually got to get up on the stage and we were able to put the crowd behind him, it just made for a more powerful shot.
Yeah.
And so therefore I was like, oh yeah, I got one for a change. So just, maybe I think it's, having certain standards, and also always wanting to like see it done in a way that you haven't seen it done before.
Uh-huh.
Because I think you could have done the very obvious shot of him that's a very kind of cliched campaign shot,
Yeah.
uh, but we did something that had some kind of power behind it.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, that's one of those times where I was like, yeah, I like that. Maybe I'm my own worst critic, but I definitely, am very picky about what I want, like, what I think is good versus what other people think is good. So
No, I fully agree. I'm similar in that way. It's even with recording the podcast, there has been an episode that I completely trashed.
what do you mean
And
trash?
uh I am not posting it
Oh, okay.
because
Okay, I
I
got you.
completely am just like, I'm gonna redo that one. And
Okay.
luckily with what I do, I do somehow have like freedom to redo it, whereas you I mean, if it's a rally, you don't get a
Yeah.
redo button.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause like most of the time that stuff's, you're making that happen in like 2 or 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and you have to be good at that.
Mhm.
Like being able to not only see what you want, but making it happen so fast, because those people's time is valuable. In in a situation like that, like, they're going to whisk him off the stage, so you better have gotten it. In a case like on a TV show or a movie, it's like you're holding up production, and that you don't want to be that person either.
Yeah.
So you get really good at being able how to figure out how to get what you need as quick as possible. And sometimes it's great and other times it's not. I mean, on a show like Lego, the great thing is that we're shooting over 10 weeks, and if something doesn't work, well, if something doesn't work, like for any type of editorial shots, I know we can probably redo it.
Yeah.
Later date. When the show is happening, there is no redoing it. Like any because the show's being filmed, they don't redo stuff. So yeah, you just you get a good like workout of being able to make something interesting in the least amount of time possible. So I mean, if I had my druthers, man, we would I'd be like, okay, let's do this, let's do that, but it's never like that. So
oh my goodness. No, I think Lego Masters is honestly, I started watching that show when it aired. When did it air? Like 2021?
yes.
Yeah. That was okay, that was 2 years ago. Yeah, I remember when it aired because I was so excited. And I was like, oh my God, like Will Arnett, Chris Pratt, like all these people that I've always like watched in movies growing up, like this show's gonna be great. And then my mom went to high school with Carrie and was like, oh, Carrie is like filming it. And I was like, well, that makes it even better. It's such a good show.
It is a lot of fun to work on. Because the behind the scenes on it is just, I mean, it's a blast. Will Arnett is legitimately funny all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
I always wondered.
Yeah. And Chris Pratt, one of the nicest guys I've ever met.
Really?
One of the nicest guys. He went out of his way to like hang out with the contestants, and just a legitimately nice guy. So
that's awesome.
Like I said, I would work on that show forever, because it's just a lot. It's just a lot of fun. I don't know how else I'll put it. I mean, I don't build Lego, but I am a nerd. So and also too, my brother loves the show. So, he's the one who actually, when I was kind of on the fence about like, oh man, is this something I want to do? He was like, you are doing that show.
He's like, you have no choice.
Yeah. And then at the end of the year, after the end of the season, now he kind of like claims that, aren't you glad I told you to do that? And I was like, I'm sure I would have come around to that, that conclusion, especially when there's a paycheck involved. But there's definitely been some moments. Oh, also too, the Brickmasters are awesome. Man, I love Amy and Jamie. I mean, I'm gonna get to see them in a few weeks. They are the coolest. So
that is so cool to hear.
You've seen the show. So I mean, like last year we had like several days where there was dogs running around because we did a dog show. We had dinosaurs from Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We had Jeff Gordon, the NASCAR like legend. And it was just there was a lot of really, really memorable moments last year. I mean, I thought the first year that I worked on it was memorable, but man, that last season was just a blast.
What is some advice that you can give to aspiring photographers?
Oh man. Oh, okay. I got a few things. And they're things that I wish I had known when I started out. Number one, you don't really need to go to college. college is great. I think college is very, very helpful. But I'm not sure that you like really need to go to college anymore for photography.
Mhm.
Um, but if you do, go somewhere where the industry is. So when you finish or while you're there and you're making connections in the industry, and then also, so when you finish, you got those connections that you can lean on. I wish I had known that.
Mhm.
Because I went to school someplace where it really like it was a great photo program, but outside of the program, there wasn't much else. Um, I would also suggest, making a point to take pictures every
Okay.
day, and take pictures of everything, anything and everything, you know, like, because you never know what might inspire you. I mean, when I very early on, I did specific types of work, and a lot of it was just mainly kind of copying what my teachers did.
Yeah.
And I'm talking like this is like 25 years ago, but
Mhm.
um I don't feel like I really found my voice until I started like just doing other things. And a lot of it was just from, living in New York and just being doing street photography all the time, photographing
Yeah.
anything and everything, people, places, objects, and then looking at all the stuff and being like, oh wow, like I really like that. That doesn't look like something I would normally do. Maybe there's something there. So and the great thing about digital is that like you can experiment to your heart's in. I mean, I'm talking about like doing it with film. So
Mhm.
but I mean, those would be my two biggest pieces of advice is like, you know when you're starting out and you don't really know anybody, if you're a freelancer, your network is all important. So
Mhm.
move to a place that you a like, but also b the industry exists, so you can kind of start to spread your wings and roots and grow your photography practice business there, and then just take pictures all the time because it is like a muscle. Like if it will atrophy if you don't use it, it will definitely uh, need some conditioning. And I don't just mean like you know like it's one thing to be a free like a working photographer making money,
Mhm.
uh, but I think it's important to take pictures just for yourself outside of getting paid for it. Like take
Yeah.
it because you still love to do it. Because I know that people that hire me and hire other photographers are really interested in like, what do you do when you're not like on assigned for something? And
Yeah.
man, I take pictures all the time. Like, there's always something, and a lot of it it's born out of my own like I don't like I get fidgety. I don't like doing the same thing over and over. So I'm always trying to kind of push it and do different things, and just for my own sanity, because
Yeah.
I hit walls where I'm like, man, God, you've made that picture 50 times now. Do something different, So, but continuing to like constantly make pictures. And even if you're not taking stuff that's necessarily going to end up in a portfolio, you're exercising that, part of your brain to get you to where you want to be. And I just don't think it's easy to just start and stop. I think it's a real process. Maybe some people have that ability to just step away from it and then immediately pick it back up.
Mhm.
I kind of work towards, especially when it comes to personal work, work towards things in a more in a slower fashion. So
That is, I personally, that is, I think, some of the best advice anybody can give.
really,